motivated me to contact the coaches? Necessity. We are 6 churches here in the parish of the Transfiguration. And like any large family, when you have 6 entities, they might love each other, but there's problems. Think about the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch were 6 people that were brought together out of necessity, and they had to get along. Some of them are Marcias, some of them are Gregs. And we realized that there was a problem of communication. So I had heard at the Bishops' Conference, have you talked with congregational coaches? Have you talked to congregational coaches?
We were motivated to contact the coaches because of a situation that was not unique, but it was unique to us. We had joined together, amalgamated, what's the word I want? Reorganized, thank you. Reorganized 3 churches into one being Chapel of Ease. So we had very similar cultures, but not completely. We worshipped a little bit differently. We ran the church a little bit differently. So we wanted to have perhaps an unbiased new perspective on who we are now as the new Holy Trinity St. Paul's. We thought this was important to help us to reorganize. We thought that it would perhaps strengthen us to know how we were alike, how we were different, what we wanted to keep, what perhaps we wanted to let go of. So that was the first reason. The second reason was the fact that we need a new rector, and we thought it was very important to understand who we are before we decide what we need and what we want in a new rector.
One of the reasons that we had the coaches come in was to do some big picture thinking.
You know, maybe I've been thinking of it this way, and then when you hear from other people, it's like, oh, actually, the thing they find most valuable in the church might be something different.
I had been here a couple of years at that point, and it was time to just sort of set a direction. It's so that we know what we're doing and who we're doing it for, how we're proclaiming the gospel, and what resources we need, what resources we have, and also just to have the words, the language to communicate what we're about at this time in this place.
Yes, now I think we contacted the coaches when we heard that they were available, because like any good team, anybody needs to follow through with all the information they can get, any resources at hand. So we figured that a good pair of coaches, which we had, can certainly help us lead our community.
We were motivated to contact the coaches because we needed guidance on creating our goals for our church.
We wanted to give people as many avenues to express their opinions as we could, so that was a big part of this decision.
We also thought it was important to bring people that would have a very unbiased and fresh opinion and could bring excuse me, something different to the table, where because we were blending the 2 congregations, neither group had a vested interest, so we had some unbiased opinions that we felt we could count on, again, as Beth said, with the experience and the reputation that preceded the coaches, that we would be well served in having good comments from our people.
When you have a team, you have to have a coach. You have to have somebody from the outside. So the coaches bring a fresh set of eyes. They can see things that we cannot see. We don't see the forest because of the trees.
All sorts of ideas were thrown out and then sort of redefined in a small group. And the group I was in had some quite young 12-year-olds in it, and that was kind of interesting to see a different perspective.
Learning a little bit about each other as a parish. Breaking up into small groups, they made sure that we were paired with people from a diverse generational background, as well as people who had been at the parish different lengths of time and potentially experienced different kinds of worship in their past experiences with church.
Before we talked about our wish list, it was who are we and what do we stand for and what are our values as a congregation.
The way the coaching happened both congregations leaned forward and participated right away because we could see the advantage of attending.
And open people to like think big and think about what the mission of this church in this community is going to be, and some of the changes that have happened in this community since this church was established.
Their questions really motivated us to think about our goals and to set our goals.
And it was in an atmosphere that was very comfortable and inviting. There was no pressure. Nobody felt intimidated. And we worked closely with St. George's because we are like a 2-point charge, but we're one parish. And so it was good to communicate with them as to what their goals are and actually how similar the two churches are for their goals.
To start with, they had us line up from how long you'd been in the congregation, which was kind of an interesting exercise. At the time, I would have thought I was going to be one of the newest members, and when we actually lined everyone up, I was somewhere in the middle of the pack, which was quite surprising. And I think our oldest member had actually been baptized in the church, and they were over 90 years old. So there was quite a range all the way back to people who'd been there less than a year. And just seeing that diversity was really cool.
Thinking about the proximity of our church to the new light rail transit in the city, thinking about the changing demographics of the neighborhood over time, things like that, and how we might be positioned to reach other newcomers as well.
Yeah, what the needs of the community is.
Yeah.
The congregational coaches told us, look around. Who are your neighbors? And we thought about St. Stephen's, Thamesville. And our neighbors are the Mexican migrant workers who come for 8 months at a time. They're separated from their families, they're isolated. So we thought, I'm from Mexico, I speak Spanish. So we thought, well, why don't we provide Spanish services for the migrant workers in the area? So we had 2 services a year ago, and they were well attended, and they came and they had fellowship. And what happened is we realized that we benefited more from them coming than they did.
I remember specifically the question of maintenance of the building or revising what the church building should be itself, and can we accomplish that? I also remember trying to define what the mission of the church was as a living group. And I remember the emphasis that had been growing for some time that we had to make a more concentrated effort for youth ministry and to take advantage of the fact that a number of our parishioners were younger than they had been for many years, I think.
You know, what would we want to do with the space? And we were able to fill a board with all sorts of different suggestions that people had of needs that they thought both our needs and the community's needs.
The advantage of the coaching and what I think it did for us was allowed us to see what we actually had here as a church, and so that it gave us a focus and an idea of how to proceed, because I think it'd be very easy without that sort of that initial coaching for special interest groups or, you know, the way we've done things in the past to just dictate how we proceed. And it really forced self-reflection. It forced us to think about where we wanted to go and what we have as a church might offer the community and what we might want to give back as well. So,
the variety of ideas that came out from, and it was a mixed group, I said, of different ages, and just how people saw things from their point of view. As I said, blue sky meaning everything from building in the parking lot, building seniors' residence, you know, it was just, that's what I mostly recall about just getting ideas out there.
Everybody had a good time. There was a lot of laughter. So that set up the individual breakout groups where we were asked very specific questions or asked to consider very specific issues of our own suggestion, as I remember, not imposed by the coaches.
We were allowed to be ourselves. We were allowed to ask questions. And we realized that if we were going to be able to go forward, we were going to have to be transparent. And it's really interesting. Even though we had been associated for so long, we decided that we were going to get to know each other. We made a covenant that we were going to do more fundraising together, that everything we did, we would do with joy, that everything we did, we would leave any little pettiness aside. It was difficult, but nonetheless, it was something that was eye-opening. It was something that we saw our strengths, we realized our weaknesses, and we came together as a unit rather than the 6 individual churches. For the first time in a very long time, when we got together in our parish councils, we realized that we were family, that we were a faith community working to the greater glory of God.
The coaches were not there to judge. They had the training, the expertise, and the humor. It just was such a positive experience. And again, I had the experience of someone at the very beginning, definitely not going to stay. This is just, and stayed to the end and fully participated. And it was someone whose opinions we definitely value very much. And we wouldn't have gotten that without the coaches.
Absolutely. I think as well, when you're in the middle of a reorganization process and you're in the middle of starting a search for a new rector, it's a little overwhelming. It's a little daunting, to say the least. So when we heard about the idea of congregational coaches, I think we all went, yes, okay. Yes. And we immediately thought it was something we wanted to explore, and certainly are very, very grateful that we did. We're grateful for the experience and for the materials that you left us with. It was very, very helpful.
I would just like to say that any congregation would benefit from inviting the congregational coaches in. And it may not just be to develop goals. There are other things that they can do for us. But they are a resource of gifted people that can help the congregation better understand what God's ministry is for us now. And that understanding comes from the people that are gathered on that day. It's not laid on. It's just a process in which we can become engaged and be free of, following an agenda and working on that day. But we have the freedoms now of being church in a way that is anchored in every congregation's discernment of God's call, and communicate that in ways that are natural to us. We're not cookie cutter, and maybe we never really were, but I think for a while we thought we were. So to really engage our local community, it takes a local discernment, and the coaches help in that local discernment and gives us what we need. The process, the outcome, gives us what we need to invite people into this faith life that we share.
Yes, I think that the congregational coaches have got us together in many ways that we didn't understand would happen. We not only did we go over problems and the direction we wanted to go in the future, but things came out of it, like how to work together, how to get our teams working together, our 2 churches that are all part of this parish working together. And now when we have a coffee hour or we have services, we all feel free to go from one church to the other or to work in the community together. There was a lot of hope and a lot of belief came out of these meetings.
The Holy Gospel should be proclaimed in the entire landscape of our ordinary lives, and that it is a life without service is a life without purpose, and that we are here to serve.